Byron Cole, mayor candidate number 22, Abolitionist, Mama D's son of New Orleans, and now officially a politician. Welcome to the Juice. Appreciate you for pulling up on me.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me. You have a nice following. I need to get my word out.
Yes, appreciate you for real. Now, let's get right into it. What does checks and balances mean to you?
Checks and balances mean that any social system you have that relies on humans to participate and human discretion needs to have an oversight, period. All of them. And full transparency to the community. That's checks and balances.
And what about upset the setup?
Upset the setup means that we have empirical data that we've collected from the ACLU and many other different organizations that are credible that prove that there are two different standards in America and that we as indigenous Black people of New Orleans specifically live a second-class citizenry. And we know that it's not fair. We know it's not legal. We know it's not constitutional. And so it's a setup that we need to upset.
So you speak about being like an indigenous person of New Orleans. Like, talk about your upbringing. Like where you from? I know you're from the 7-1, but like, what about like your family and stuff?
So my parents are both from Mississippi. But my mother and father were both brought here at an early age. My mother was brought here at 4, and she grew up in the Desire Housing Project in the 9th Ward of New Orleans. My father grew up on Amelia Street, uptown, and I believe that's the 3rd Ward. And so they were the first generation of a half of my family, because now that I think about it, my mother's people were from Haiti, but my mama's father's people were from here. And so what I wanted to get into was that my mother, from her coming here and to her death, was intricate in New Orleans society, so much that she was named in the 300 most influential New Orleanians ever, like with Jean Lafitte and whatnot, right? And that came from a love of where she grew up and an understanding of its politics and trying to mitigate it for the best of the majority, the whole, and the indigenous. And so my father, he grew up uptown, typical uptown boy, went to Coin, well-known, state championship quarterback. The wrestler Ernie Ladd was on his football team with him. A couple of different players went to the Professional Football League. And so my parents grew up in New Orleans in a thriving time for conscious Black people, right? And I grew up under 2 sets of traditional family codes. Like my mother's family name is Tobias. That's this tattoo I have right here. That's a Haitian flag in the middle because that's their origins, right? And so I grew up with a Haitian influence on my mother's side that constantly talked about integrity and, different virtues and whatnot. And then my father, he's a Cole, and that's what I have over here. And so my grandmother C used to sit us at the table and talk to us about, morality and, what type of people we were gonna be, and how when we got to be adults, we would see that people didn't put much faith or stock into simple things like integrity and transparency, and that how we should not let that change our focus from who we wanted to be when we looked in the mirror. And so I'm saying all those things because combine that with, red beans, jambalaya, 4th of July, City Park, second lines, seeing the Indians, parades, some of my unique experiences, like when I was at St. Augustine, I was a member of the band, and I was in some of the Mardi Gras commercials, featured in them, at an early age, and it made me feel like a part of the city and its fabric, And so all of those factors, plus my mother insisting that anything coming out of her can't be conscious and a people's servant, and I have a history to prove that. All of that, is what got me to where I am today.
Okay, so at what point did you get into politics?
Okay, so my mother was an original Black Panther affiliate, and she was also the first Black woman to be elected to be president of the NAACP. And when I was born into a climate of serious Pan-Africanism, right? And so, like, my mother hosted exchange students from Africa long before there was that kind of programming institutionally. She just knew people in Africa, and they would come and stay with us and go to Delgado and other schools, right? And so my traditional upbringing made me say I would never be a politician. I was taught at an early age to understand and distinguish the bureaucracy when I spot it. And as we know, the systems nationwide are corrupt, but specifically here in New Orleans, we see just, egregious corruption. And so when I came back home after my migration, that most of the talented 10th from New Orleans are forced to do to make, their money, to get capitalism initiated. I came home to my city in shambles, not just physically, but corruption was just rampant and outward, and you could call people out on it outwardly, and people would know you were telling the truth, and still there'd be no they would have to feel no reprisal. And so I start figuring out that the only way that I could make the people in my city who are corrupt face any atonement was to control the seats where I can do that. And so I started off with mayor because I was gonna run for District D, and my mother passed, and she was gonna walk me through. And then Dr. Bowie jumped in District D election, and I didn't wanna insult the elder or be out of place. So I stepped out of that race, and I didn't have my mother to advise me. So I chose mayor because I wanted to have a citywide conversation. And now I see really that I chose it instinctively, because it's really where I need to be to affect the change that we all need to see and agree upon.
And before you were actually in being a politician, you started as an abolitionist basically. Explain how did you get into that?
Okay, so I distinguish myself as an abolitionist because people often term me an activist, and what I've seen in activist behavior really is a display of people with ulterior motives, side businesses, books they're selling, rappers, models, whatever the service, right? The activists go around and they promote a tour of service. And then they say, oh, and yeah, I fight for this cause. And you see it's on my t-shirt. And they'll lend remedial help to it. But when it's time to do true civil disobedience like Dr. King did, when they actually bring the hose or the dog, or, you see the cuffs and you're going to jail, they pause there. An abolitionist is fighting for one thing, period, and that's the end to the fight, and the only end to the fight besides the end to the abolitionists. And so that's what I'm trying to distinguish there. And I got started doing that out of being a black man in America, man. The double standards that have been documented so many times, so often by so many credible sources, that every time I see a D.L. Hughley post, I had to unfollow him, because with all that influence he has, why is he still posting stuff that we've been documenting since Du Bois? And now we've documented again in front of the world with Floyd and Tamir Rice and everyone else. And that's his still greatest contribution as an intellectual, is to just reiterate that we have a problem. when he has an influence and a discretion that he could use, but he won't because he's scared to lose his audience, which none of that is real or secure in any facet. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay, so you probably you are, well, I don't know, are you still a private investigator?
Well, so I want to be technical. I am now currently an investigator, not private, because I'm contracted to a law firm here locally. But yes, I'm still in that line of work.
And how did that play an influence, well, how did that influence you on, as far as like politics?
Okay, so the first reason I became an investigator, a private investigator, is because I needed access to the court. I was trained by my mother, and unwittingly, actually, just watching her do it, I started learning things and how to go to the clerk and get this information to supersede this, and just little techniques I learned from my mother, just watching like a bear does its mother, right? And so I just started getting phone calls from people saying, B, this happening to me over here in section such and such, such and such. And I'd be like, oh, I do know the clerk there, or that's not legal and I know how to counteract that, right? And so I was in Orleans Parish and Jefferson Parish doing that so efficiently that Jefferson Parish stopped me from coming in and actually violated my civil rights as an advocate, documented and licensed in the state by being on the board of a 501c3 recognized by the state and being a vice president of it. I was well within my rights and the rights of my client, and I've been banned from Jefferson Parish courts, and Orleans Parish did the same thing to me. So when they banned me, I figured out that if I went and got a private investigator license, that I could have some rights and responsibilities in the court, and I did that to be able to use those.
And did it work?
Yes. You saw my video where they wouldn't let me in the courthouse with my phone, right? Did you see my video where I said I got a call from Marlon Guzman himself overturning that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's how I was within my rights. I was not given any favor. I just called them on what was illegal, checks and balances.
Okay, you ran in 2017, right?
Yes.
What made you run again?
The conditions.
Yeah.
But in 2017 when I ran, they reported I only got 500 votes and people were laughing. And I was able to keep my head up high because I know where I come from, right? But at the same time, I was also reverberating to them that the conditions were going to change people's outlook on what was real and what they needed to do in regards to their own well-being, right? And so guess what happened in the last 4 years? Exactly that. All of the different situations and conditions, and George Floyd and, the Hard Rock Tower. And do you know what a perfect storm is? It's like gumbo. You from here?
Mm-hmm.
You like gumbo?
Mm-hmm.
New Orleanians love gumbo. What city am I running for mayor? New Orleans. So I won't be cocky, but I will say that the conditions have pushed my people to an understanding and a recognition of my resume, my working model of work history, my ethics, my morality, my transparency. And I do believe that a runoff could have us all eating gumbo again. That real good gumbo.
So let's talk about like your agenda and some of the things you want to accomplish.
Yes.
Preferably like your first 90 days in office. I know on a prior interview you talked about you have like a list of 10 major things that you want to accomplish as soon as you get in office. But I want to talk like COVID right now because COVID is like prevalent at this moment. So how do you feel about how it was handled overall within the past year?
So I would prefer not to begin by critiquing my opponent. Can I add that at the end?
Okay, that's fine.
All right, so let me start with COVID and your concern as a young person, which you should be.
Mm-hmm.
Old people are the most concerned, it seems, but they're the ones that have already lived life, And so I want to say this, and it may seem off topic, but it's not. I'm from here. When I'm driving past Warren Easton and I see two rats crossing the street and not even running on Canal Street, and it's 12 in the afternoon, I know my city's filthy. You hear me? When I see that the cockroach population is doubled or tripled, and I can tell from, the occurrence of seeing them, and I'm used to seeing them. They'll come in your house if it's raining. The big ones I'm talking about, right? Like there's more, and that contributes to the filth. And if you haven't noticed, New Orleans right now is infested with flies. You go under the bridge, you go to City Park, anywhere you go, if you pull out anything that attracts a fly, you will have one on you in minutes. And so what I'm trying to tell you is my first thing I'm gonna do to deal with COVID is put a real effort back into environmental beautification. What most people don't know is my mother was the director of environmental beautification under Dutch and his son, and a couple of other mayors as well. And so that's how I know the city. I know its needs. I know where there's a propensity for illegal dumping. I know how my mother and the mayor and the administrations have dealt with that. I know how what code enforcement is effective and what isn't, and what is a burden to the citizen. I know that my mother's programming use city resources to go out and encourage people to clean their neighborhoods by sending trucks out and big machinery and paying her employees overtime to go out and do this for the people and help assist in making sure it was done, instead of it being a culpability issue for the citizen that pays to facilitate all of this. And so that's the beginning of my answer for COVID. Now, vaccinations are a personal choice. I myself had no discretion to stop my first kids from being vaccinated, but I was on my last two, right? And so we've been going to school, and under religious proclamation have been denying, we've been signing a waiver for vaccinations. So I know why I do that in real time, what I've witnessed with the health of my children and did not like and question, and have heard multiple parents from around the world say similar things and question things like retardation and other things, autism in children due to vaccination. And so I'm not willing to take that risk with mine. And the constitutionality backs me up on that, right? But I would encourage anyone that feels like they need to do that to make sure they have that done. There's plenty of places where you can have that done, and I will make sure as mayor that you can have that done. But I'm not going to spend money getting rappers to make campaigns and money I could be using to actually fight COVID or help other structures within city government. See, we have too much aesthetic things happening that don't have real result. So that's what I meant by that. But yeah, so you'll be able to get a vaccination, in our normal facilities under my mayorship. And I am going to say this. I think we as Americans need to consider adopting face masks as wardrobe. I am going to look at statistics to dictate how I'm going to use my power to dictate what happens in our city. And no one will be able to argue with that empirical data. But I myself have been encouraged by my family and my loved ones that even just now in the race, that they would like me to wear a mask just because of the uncertainty. And so if my family feels that way, then I'm open to support what other families are feeling. So we're gonna have a consensus on how we'll move forward. But I'll tell you this, we host a lot of things, and that I will not be doing. I will not be putting capitalism over the people. I mean the major things like Super Bowl, Essence, things of that nature. Because I caught COVID on Mardi Gras Day last year, and we could do better. But in our city, if we wear a mask and everyone's compliant, why shut down a Dookie Chase when we can just do maximum occupancy, that's correlated to the numbers of what the disease is presenting.
That brings me to my next question. If you were married today, what would you do right now to spread the slow spread of the Delta variant?
Well, I will tell you this. I think masks, as I said in the last question, are essential. But one thing I do want to explore, and I've thought about this before in the French Quarters, you know those little water fountains where you can wash your hands at the school that used to be a circle and be outside? I want to put those in strategic areas all over our tourism sector from now on, period, as part of our environment, just to promote the environmental beautification that I was talking about. And, everything that motivates human nature is about reward. So, we implement programming and we reward the citizens for, taking part in it and participating. But at the same time, they see the result by us not being afflicted. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, so you talked about let's go to gentrification, because you talked about making the city more beautiful with the fountains and stuff like that. In a video earlier, I want to say earlier this week, you said you would make it to where we would put no more bike lanes in the city. Why is that a case?
Okay, so let me tell you this. I was the victim of a hit and run. I was bored, taking some classes at Delgado, and I was riding my bike, commuting, right? I don't live far from Delgado in Gentilly in 7th Ward. So I was a victim of a hit and run. And I realized that day that the bike lane and its bendable barrier really does nothing. This is an issue of driver awareness and driver safety. It did not save me. And so I think that there's a correlation between them popping up everywhere and illicit contracting, or at least if that can't be proven, at least frivolous contracting, because some of the sites. So what my exact bullet point is on this topic is reassessment of placement of current bike lanes and a consensus from the community it's in before they're placed anymore. That's what our bullet point is, right, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what
I wanted to say, why, in your opinion, is it really such a bad thing? Why not give the bike lanes or just
So I don't know the statistics.
Give the road back to the pedestrians. You see what I'm saying? Because of climate change.
I don't know the statistics.
Algiers spent $500,000 putting bike lanes on places that it took out lanes of traffic.
Yeah, but wait,
but that's what I'm saying.
I can go further. I can go further though.
Because they ultimately help climate change.
The data, so in that area, there were 10 people who rode by on bikes. There were 75 cars in an hour. There was no need for a $500,000 construction project that took people's driveways away, took lanes of traffic away for 10 people.
And wait. And also, there's another more important factor. I can't speak for Algiers, but in the 7th Ward, the one on Galvez, it doesn't belong there. We've seen multiple accidents involving bikes, cars, trucks, right there. That's a congested area, and it's not even, you don't even feel comfortable driving down that street. And so that was not thought out. There was no study done there because, let me tell you why. Galvez and Mayoral are parallel throughout their whole existence, okay? And so if it was really about that, they could have just put a universal bike lane on one of those streets. Do you hear what I'm telling you? But it's about spending money that's been allocated in the budget, and it has to be spent that fiscal year. You get what I'm saying? And so who has that discretion?
I get what
The
you're
mayor
saying.
and the
My
city
thing
council.
is, ultimately, what I'm saying is, it helps climate change, giving the road back to pedestrians.
Yes, but what he just told you was that we need to be responsible in a city where we need money for family programming and youth, right? When we can spend that kind of money on that and the data doesn't support or warrant it. If 10 bikes passed all day in the random cross section of time they chose to view it, if 10 bikes passed and 75 cars passed, man, then that particular roadway needs to facilitate motor traffic. That's all we're saying. Now there are some streets. So Jeff Davis is a great street, or excuse me, Norman Francis Parkway. It's a great street to have a bike lane. But Canal Street, if you want to parallel this, is a wide street that you might think would be suited for a bike lane, but it's not because of the type of traffic. And so we have to look at the ergonomics. We have to look at everything, man, right? Like we can't just say what we feel. That's why you hear him say studies have been done for this and studies have been done for that. But we're also at this point now using studies to stifle progress. So what I'm gonna do is get real-time consensus from my people the day I get in. I will go on my Instagram. You call me out if I don't do it. And say, what do we want to do with Lincoln Beach, y'all? And be selfieing myself on your mayor. I will be selfieing myself and won't have nobody blocked. And y'all tell me what we want to do with Lincoln Beach. And if I can get 100,000 views on a video when I ain't the mayor, once 100,000 people from New Orleans that's registered tell me what we want to do with Lincoln Beach, that's what we're going to do with Lincoln Beach. And whoever argues, going to have a real fight on their hands because I have to do what the consensus dictates. That's what mayor means.
Okay, so let's talk about the City Hall and the East idea.
Yes.
The ultimate goal is to build an economy in the East, right?
And infrastructure to grow an economy, yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. So, how would you get industry to invest in one of the most impoverished parts of the city?
So, I mentioned earlier that I was going to be creative. So, I don't know if you know this, but hotel industry can get welfare. It's called HUD allocation. It's the same pool of money that a person would have if they had 3 children and they get a welfare check. Same pool of money, okay? So I'm gonna encourage hotel growth to support civil court and city hall and whatever else pops up out there by just telling them that, hey, let's apply for the federal funding, you get the HUD money. And if you bring to New Orleans a standard of $17 an hour across the board for the lowest employee in your place, I will also give you 10 years tax-free that you don't owe me on this property. You see what I'm saying? I can use what I have discretion to manipulate, and that's what we've never seen done for us. And I also would like to mention that it's not arbitrary that all of the tourism, all of the industry, all of where, we collect our record profits from tourism is in that one sector of the city and controlled by one demographic. If New Orleans put City Hall and Civil Court in the East and that 10-story garage they want and these hotels I envision and these towers, affordable living towers where we can invite in the transplant, then what's gonna happen is people gonna stop going to other cities around us, period. Because think about it, what would bring a person to New Orleans in the state of our infrastructure compared to a Dallas, compared to a Houston, compared to an Atlanta, right? If it wasn't for what's naturally innate to us, right? So we possess what brings them to us. If we build it, they will come. I envision in my second term, if I'm blessed enough to be elected, that by the time I'm halfway through with my second term, New Orleans will have tripled in population, and there will be a huge transplant population in the East in a nice section of brand new up-to-date, modern towers like we see in other major cities that have facilitated growth. And they will have a community that they can call theirs, and that they won't displace the indigenous. And we can get all of the benefits from having them here and participate in our tax base and the new ideas they want to bring to the table. And by us literally inviting the people in with the growth, it's very affordable housing in a new section of town that the city owns most of already.